Seeing that we have a quorum and seeing that it's 4 o'clock, I call the meeting to order. January 26th, Finance Committee meeting. Just a reminder, we are being videoed and audioed. Before we jump into the meat of our agenda, any public comment items are not otherwise on the agenda? Seeing none. We have minutes that were sent to us. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so into our reviews. To the water company and to the airport, county is going to go first. It's not going to take them very long, so Livy or Brian, whoever's going to do the presentation on the county, have at it, and then we'll get to the rest of our agenda. Thank you.
Oh, Jen? Oh, I can let Jen do it, actually. And we do have the registrar here, Jen Ferreira, as well. So if I can't answer a question, she will certainly be able to, but I hopefully will be able to answer them all. So as we presented last night, the county budget, the county is made up of county administration, registry of deeds, which is all in the packet that I believe that we did send to you. The revenue sources come from the following areas: the town assessment, deeds excise revenue, recording fees, corrections, deeds excise, the public safety facility, which is the $250,000 that the county contributes every year towards the debt service. And if we need any fund balance from either the registry of deeds, excise fund balance, or county fund balance. Page 4 will show you the projected revenue for the county. It includes the assessment of $170,201 from the town, which is consistent with last year. Estimated deed excise receipts of $425,000, broken down between county admin of $255,000 and registry of deeds and $170,000. Recording fees of $171,500, and then, as mentioned, the corrections deeds excise in the amount of $250,000. If everything comes in as projected, we will collect $1,016,000 in the county.
Have you typically met your?
We have typically met those numbers, yes. So there's this interesting and unique thing in the county called the maintenance of effort, which basically says that by law the county must provide a certain amount of 9 deeds excise revenue to the registry, which is the town assessment. Every year we take the previous total amount of the maintenance of effort, which and increase it by 2.5%. This year's requirement is $313,509. When you back out the registry calculation of $171,500, you get what the county, the assessment has to be. It's actually less than $170,000, but we've recommended continuing to maintain it at the $170,000 that we have since I've been here. Projected expenses within county, $258,964. They maintain no employees. Basically, it's legal and professional services within that county administration. Within the registry of deeds, there are 3 full-time employees and deeds and excise special projects. Again, we, as noted, the $250,000 for the debt service that is transferred annually to cover the public safety facility. Total projected expenses of $985,812.
Professional services generally are for?
Mostly legal and what else? Professional services. And taking. So it's engineering or anything for takings that we need to do within the county. Then we have the comparison from 18 to 17. As noted, last year there was an increase of $250,000, which you'll see a reduction of in the fiscal 18 budget under county administration, which was for some takings that may actually be done during fiscal 17. The deeds or the total registry of deeds budget for is $476,000, and again the $250,000 for the public safety facility debt service, giving us the $985,000. So as I mentioned last night, we presented to the county commissioners who did adopt the $985,000 budget, and tonight hopefully either you'll review it and or adopt it. Hopefully adopt it.
Great. Questions? A couple of quick questions on the payroll. Does that include statutory benefits, health
Yes.
insurance?
Yes.
Pension?
Includes all of those, yes.
So they're not included elsewhere in the town's budget?
No, they're not.
Okay.
They all pay that.
Good? Everybody good? Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion. Second.
No discussion beyond what we've had? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay. Water Company. Good afternoon. You're going to do, well, we'll take them in order. Is that the right way to do it, Bob? Wanacommet first and then Sconset? You're going to go first, but do you want to do Sconset first or Wanacommet?
Let's do Sconset if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, the Sconset budget, I believe you have in your packet, and in accordance with the budget directions we received, you have in your packet the exceptions in the Sconset budget. And I will say generally that in the Sconset budget that does not call for a rate increase this year. Revenues are projected to be fairly flat for Sconset, but I would like to just briefly address the exceptions, if you will, in Sconset, and there are two exceptions in your budget package. The first and the largest one is professional services. The Sconset Water Department is unique in the Commonwealth. It's one of a handful, and literally a handful of systems that are what are called registered public water supplies. The rest of us are permitted public water supplies, and I'm going to address that more in my budget presentation for Wanacommet. It doesn't seem like there's much difference, but if you're a registered system, you have a certain amount of latitude and flexibility in how much water you can withdraw and when you withdraw it. And you also have some relief from regulations because of your size. And Sconset is, it's in everyone's best interest to try to retain that registration versus permitting. They still have to pay for the water out of the ground like the rest of us, but a lot more flexibility. So the one area or one issue outstanding that may have an impact on whether they retain registration is the Wellhead Protection District in Sconset. There are two. One was determined by USGS back in the 70s. The other one was adopted in 1995 by a town meeting when we adopted the Wellhead Protection bylaws. That's a zoning bylaw. And in that, it makes reference to the Zone 2 developed at that time. So when they come to the Sconset Water Company and say, I need a building permit, we have to sign off that's not going to impact, and it complies with the bylaw. DEP has a real problem, and I have a real problem with two Zone 2s because they're so opposed. One is south of the pump station, the other is north. You pump from either one or the other, but you don't pump from both. So in meeting with DEP this fall, they said, you know, you really got to get that resolved or your registration is going to be in jeopardy. So we have budgeted accordingly in the professional services quite an increase to allow us to do the hydrogeological work to be able to present and define the Zone 2, however it comes down, and have it ready for the 2018 annual town meeting so the zoning bylaw can be amended. Everyone will be operating off the same page. DEP will be happy. Sconset keeps its registration. The other, there is a slight increase in maintenance work as well planned for Sconset. That's and I would point out that this is a one-time increase at the professional services. We get it done, move on. So that's kind of the bottom line for Sconset.
Talk a little bit about the capital, please.
I would talk about the capital. Large capital item for Sconset, and that's the Baxter Road water main. This fall, we went into Baxter Road and cut it open. And if I'd been quicker on my feet today, I would have brought a piece of this pipe with me, but it's, you would be hard-pressed to push a golf ball more than 8 inches in any one direction before you'd have to shift. It's terrible. Terrible condition. It's unlined cast iron pipe, no flow in a seasonal system, and we recognize that. We have to run a blow-off to keep water quality. So fairly confident that the road's going to stay there, and there's enough easement to put that water main on in Baxter Road. You know, you don't think of Baxter. Baxter Road is over a mile long. I mean, it's a hike up there. When you're walking it, you really get that sense. But this is a very major undertaking for Sconset Water. But it's really gone beyond the point where you can do with anything with it. Fire flow is virtually non-existent. I mean, it's 500, 600 gallons a minute. That's not acceptable. So we're going to make steps to make that better.
And you're going to do that through a bond, general obligation bond financed.
I'm sorry, David.
Excuse me. I need to speak up. Sorry about that. You're going to finance it through a GO bond or?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you're doing hydrant replacements?
Not in Sconset. That's a misprint.
Okay.
The only hydrant replacement, if it's in Sconset, it shouldn't be there. It's in Wanacommet. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Actually, we just a year ago refurbished them, so they're in pretty good shape.
Good.
Yeah. Could you refresh my memory on what exactly we did, seeing where it seemed to be the same now or separate when we joined Watercommon and Sconset? Was that just administrative duties, or what did we do last year?
The management contract with us? Yep. The management contract remains the same between the two commissions. The merger article, the merger proposal is in the legislature right now.
Oh.
And at the earliest, and I believe in fiscal year 19, there'll only be one budget. It'll all be together. So right now, the management fee to Sconset stays the same.
So that doesn't negatively affect the ability for us to register one versus
No.
Permit, like you just talked about?
Yep.
Okay.
Other questions?
Just a quick question. In terms of whether or not Sconset generates a surplus or not, I presume it's just how much water gets drawn. I mean, it looks like your expense structure has been very flat over several years, and
That's right.
You have a year where it's a hot summer. People, what are their lawns for?
You know,
More revenue?
that is the case in the Wanacommet system, but Sconset, it doesn't seem to vary much. It's reached a plateau, if you will, I believe, because it used to be a big jump in the summer, drop right off at Labor Day. Now it's a big jump up right around Memorial Day, and then it's a big drop off at Labor Day. So, and people water. A real wet summer will make a difference. For example, 2015 was probably one of the driest summers we've had in years, and you notice an uptick, but it's not as big a difference as in the Wanacommet system. So any revenue that's excess of expenses goes back into retained earnings and stays there. And unfortunately, there's only 800 customers out there.
Great. Any other questions?
Yeah, just, looks like a pretty big decrease in other expenses. Was that just budgeting and allocation that those numbers found their way to where they should be? Or?
I have to make an announcement. I'm deaf. I hear like a rock.
No problem. I was just asking about the other expenses where there was a pretty big decrease, and it looks like that was mainly unallocated stuff in previous times. Is that just budgeting?
The unallocated expense is a balancer. It's a budget balancer.
Oh, okay.
And unallocated expense, both Sconset and Wannacomet, has strings attached to that. It can only be spent. I don't have the authority to spend from that line item without a vote of the Water Commission. And that's the way it should be. That's not a slush fund. That's not a rainy day fund. But what it is some money that over the years has proved pretty useful when all of a sudden, for example, a drain line goes in a street and the DPW is going to replace it. And now's the time to replace that section of water main or do improvements, and you have this little bit of money to make it happen. But that's what the unallocated is for.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Have we completed the transponder installation for all the water meters? Is that something ongoing, or are we done with
Yes, the Sconset meter conversion. Yep.
that? Well, not just the whole town, Watercomet also. Are we done with that one?
Wannacomet done, pretty much. It is done. There are some big accounts like the hospital. When the hospital gets rebuilt, we'll have a radio read in there because now it's down in the basement behind the boiler. It's hard to get radio signal through that. So Sconset's ongoing. The plan is that by the start of the summer season, Sconset will be on the same FlexNet system as Wannacomet. We'll be able to see what's happening out there minute by minute. So with this weather, you can get some work done. Let me see if I can get my special hearing thing here to work. Thanks for your patience. It's the reason I'm retiring. It's called deaf. That's better. Okay. Any other questions for Sconset?
No? Great, thanks. For Sconset, should we go on to Wannacomet?
Okay. I'd just like to make the comment and that Wannacomet is really benefiting from the current building boom on Nantucket. We're in a strong fiscal position right now, and I'd just like to go over some of the assumptions that were made when we prepared this budget, then address, if you will, the exceptions. The water sales. Water sales are calculated as a running 3-year average because nothing affects our water sales like weather. A hot beach day, just for an example, will be 4 million gallons pumped that day. The next day, it's a rainy day, it'll be 3.5 million. Same number of people, but the weather makes an impact on irrigation patterns now as rain sensors have become more sophisticated. And we're seeing that. And everyone's in town, and they're gridlocked, and you can't get to a shower anyway, so we don't need that. But so we're anticipating using that model of our rolling 3-year average that water sales are going to increase about 3.35% of metered water sales. Our service charge remains at $25 for the base meter, and then it's based on meter size, and that's based on 6,042 accounts. We have 177 private fire services, and that's probably the largest increase, the largest service group that we have that's increasing. That seems every time you change the use of a commercial building now, it needs to have a fire system. And the demand for that is more than we ever thought it would be. The revenues for water connections are based on 115 new connections. Probably going to be 117 at the end of this fiscal year, but clearly, about every 2 days we're putting a new water service in. The other overall budgeted revenues are about 6.13%. The budget does not have a rate increase in it. I'd like to address now the exceptions that were pointed out. Oh, sorry. The repair and maintenance, I'll go down through them. The repair and maintenance to water mains is a significant jump. We now are experiencing a couple more breaks in the older parts of the system as we continue to improve the system, but each water main break on average is about $8,000. We have as you read our capital plan, we have an extensive program to replace water mains, and just today we started doing the valve maintenance and exercising and being able to shut the system down, and we're finding that we're going to have to replace a number of valves next year to be able to facilitate replacing the water main. So I don't expect that to be the same in fiscal year 19. Repair and maintenance services up $26,000. Normally, water service leak is about $5,000 for 3 or 4 a year, but the biggest item in here is we're planning on upgrading 3 of the fountains that fall into this. If you'll notice, the fountain at Milestone Road at the intersection is just a concrete pipe sticking up. Well, you compare that to the ones on Hummock Pond Road that have the little thing for the dog. They're ADA compliant. They're great fountains, and people appreciate them. So we've budgeted for 3 more to take the concrete pipe ones out of the ground at Milestone, Nantucket Road, and Surfside. And then in the following year, we'll replace the rest of them. So that's why the big jump there. Pump structures are a combination of repairs and maintenance to carpentry, replacing rake boards. These are the David Worth Pump Station in the State Forest, North Pasture, Wires Valley, 2 pump stations there, and the structure at Washing Pond. All need carpentry work, and probably the largest item in here, it is the largest item, is the repair to the security fencing. Last 2 or 3 years, the storms have really raised havoc with that fencing, and when DEP came and did their survey this fall, they said, you know, you really got to do something with your security fencing. So we're going to undertake replacing large sections of that. Washing Pond, you know, that's about as exposed as you're going to get to the elements up there, and it doesn't take long for the salt air to go through that. Professional services, once again, I alluded to the fact that Wannacomet is a permitted system. And right now, in fact, a week from tomorrow, we have our big hearing with DEP because the Water Management Act permit that you're issued is good for 21 years. It's quite a long permit, and it's set, and you cannot alter it only at every 7-year increment. And what that does is set the withdrawal rate that we're allowed to pump out of the ground. It also has some other restrictions that we're not comfortable with. But there are some restrictions that have been placed in the draft permit that we've already been told are not going to change. And that's what's going to be paid for out of these professional services. They include a system-wide survey to determine leak and pressure loss. You know, that's close to $60,000 when you do that, the whole system. And We don't think it's necessary. We ran our own little test this week, and we turned the pumps off, just lived off the tanks. And with our meter system, we can read before and after, and we're within 1% of metering what we come out of the system. But we have to do that. We have to do a water audit and complete that in accordance with the American Water Works Association M36 standard. We have to do, and the Commission is committed to a water rate and cost of service survey. So those three things add up to about 115,000, and then the balance is our general engineering. Pick up the phone and say, I got a problem with a pump. Can you help me out? Sort of thing. So once again, one-time expenses, but they're necessary to comply with this permit. Our inventory account, $50,000. The way that our system works, and it's a holdover, and it works great from the private, when Wannacomet was private till 1987, everything gets charged to the inventory account to do with meters, materials for putting a service in, pipe, hydrants, and then they're charged out to a specific job. So the fact that it must be a coincidence that the cost of no-lead brass jumped significantly after the Flint, Michigan episode. I'm sure that was not intentional on the part of the manufacturer.
Of course
not. But it did. And so with the building going on, with the number of connections we're doing, the amount of materials we're buying is more that we need to support this. Goes through the inventory account, gets charged back out. So that's why that increase is directly result of building increase on Nantucket.
Would you know, or maybe how do you would know, how many turns you do on your inventory, since you're keeping track of it in fairly precise fashion?
How many turns?
Yeah, how often are you turning over the inventory? So if you have $100,000 worth of inventory, are you turning it once a year, twice a year, once every 2 years?
We inventory once a year, and it really doesn't change significantly. It's probably right close to $100,000 right now, if not a little bit higher. But then, it'll build up as we get material in for this time of year for the spring go. But then it get charged out to all the jobs, and then the number will go back down. So it goes up and down like this. It's inventory is a little deceptive, but that's the term that we've always used, and it works. It allows us to keep track of the material we buy and the job that it's charged to. So there's also, you notice, a meter technician position. Wannacomet has always had 4 utility men, they're called. They work on the system. They do whatever needs doing. Kurt Glidden retired a couple of years ago after 45 years with the water company. And at that time, we decided to hold off to replace that position until we could take a real look at what our personnel needs were and the workload. Well, technology has helped a lot with that type of workload, and the shift has gone from shovels to keyboards. That's what, and so we use the money that's always been budgeted for Kurt's position, and we hired and created the position of assistant business manager to Heidi, and that's what that money is funded for. But we don't need another utility man. What we need is a meter technician. We have almost 7,000 meters. They're all smart meters, or will be by April. They're all smart meters. They need to be programmed. They need to be monitored. It's a full-time job for one person, and it's been spread out among the other utility men, and it just is not efficient. So we're going to have a meter person that's going to be assigned to that function. So that is the reason for the creation of a meter tech position. So we're going to add, our total staff number will be up 1, as we're budgeting up 1 in FY18.
Okay, Peter?
Maybe a long-winded question, Bob, so I apologize. Specifically about the employees, I looked at your org chart last year. You had 11, which included that vacant utility
That's
person.
right. Yep.
This year in your budget, you have 13, which is a +2. It also includes that one vacant utility. So what's the difference between 13 and 11 and you saying 1?
The vacant position last year was filled by the assistant business manager in September.
Yeah, I see that.
Yep, now we're that. So we're going to have those people, 10. We're going to add 1 more for 11.
All right, so I guess the math, if I go to your bubble chart and your org chart, I count 13. But so specifically, when you look at that, your payroll is going up 16.9%. So is it the one person, the meter tech, and the assistant business manager that equates to the majority of that increase?
The salary alone for that one person is going to be $70,000 plus benefits, plus a range of somewhere between 2 and 2.5% for the rest of the staff, plus the increase in the medical insurance, and that accounts for the 9.5%.
So I'd only ask just to check your chart, and maybe I counted wrong, but I think I counted it twice. I'm looking at 13 names and 11 names, so I look at that as a delta 2. And I guess as an operational...
But if you look at utility vacant, there's no money budgeted. So you could take that right out.
Okay.
The utility, we're going to have meter tech, and we have the 1,000,064,000 does include that vacant utility man position. Whether that, there is no intent at this time to fill that, but we are keeping it in for account because I believe in probably a year or so we will have to.
So I guess as an operator, I like to give employees work if there's work that's needed to be done and you add employees. So how many numbers of meters have we actually added? How has our workload increased to bring on different people who weren't part of the system?
We have approximately 7,000 meters that need to be attended to that are, first of all, when a meter comes in, it needs programming. GPS has to go into it.
Yep, understand.
All that. Yep, understand that. And now, with our Water Management Act permit requirement, you have to calibrate those every 10 years. So on a rotating basis, we'll be calibrating meters. So it is plenty of work for one meter technician. Now you have the utility men that are maintaining the rest of the system, which has 117 miles of water mains, 600 water meters, and thousands of valves, and 2 water storage tanks and 4 pump stations. So I think we're using technology. We're pretty lean for what our requirements are and what our responsibilities are.
So do we know, I guess my question was, do we know how many increased accounts we've experienced over that year? How many new accounts we've actually had to physically add? Where has construction brought us?
We're budgeting of adding 117 new accounts.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Can I ask you a question on the testing for the leaks? You said we shut off the pumps and we just use the pressure and we could add and subtract. What other tests would they do? Is it the state or federal government to determine whether there was leaks?
It's called a noise correlation test. And a firm would come in and they'll put sensors throughout the system on valves, hydrants, and they will look at an oscilloscope, and you plug in the size of the pipe, the material of the pipe, and take a guess at what the inside looks like for a flow factor. You look at the oscilloscope, and when it goes like this, there's a leak. And then they plot those, and then you've got to go fix them. I honestly don't believe we're going to find that kind of a leak. Our system is a low-pressure system. The pumps don't run a lot in the winter. The tanks are sensitive to some changes, but it's a requirement of the permit. And there aren't a lot of firms that do it, and they charge a lot of money. But that's how it works. We've just calibrated our main meters on Monday as we start to prepare for this. We're out now making sure you can get on valves and places where these sensors can go.
Right. So how many? So you say every 7 years they make you do that, the test, or for the leaks? Was it every 7 years or every 10 years? How often do we have to do that leak test?
Well, depending on the results, I'm hoping that we're going to have to do it only every 10 years.
Right.
But I would not be surprised that as part of this negotiating to get more water withdrawal, to take the restrictions off for irrigation use, for example, that every 7 years we're probably going to have to do this.
Okay. And what's the? I guess they're looking out for the public, but I mean, who cares if your water leaks? What's their premise behind that? Are we just using tune?
Well, from an operator's point of view, you don't want to waste the resource.
Well, that's true.
And you don't want to waste electricity to do it. But, the last time that we did this, we were at 6% unaccounted for water. It has been creeping up. It's now up around 11%. The national standard is under 10%. When we went over 11, that was the. But I'm still not. It's a. Where do you draw the line in the sand when you read your tanks, when you read your pumps? Does an hour make a difference? So, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Good, Joe. Bob, just looking at the financials in the packet, you talk about 3-year averages, the way that you look at Wanacombat and Sconset. I was struck by, on the 3-year average, you've got about a $788,000 surplus on average, 15% of your average revenues. Is that standard for the water company? Or are you supposed to be running at a break even? If and therefore, why, or are you sort of generating? I mean, it's pleasant to generate a surplus, but is that sort of what you're chartered to do?
Well, certainly, it's a fine line between, do you break even? How much do you have in the bank as your retained earnings? Right now, our certified retained earnings are $2.6 million, and I can remember when it was barely $100,000. So we've tried hard to create enough revenue to enable us to do a fairly aggressive capital program. This system was built in 1880, and we have averaged over $1 million of capital and replacement to support the economy on Nantucket, to provide public health. So right now we have $2.6 million, and when we get to the capital, we're asking for $1 million. We'd like to use $1.5 million of that, knowing that we don't have to borrow it, that interest rates are certainly seemingly like they're on the rise, and that is a benefit to the ratepayer. And as part of our professional services budget, we're going to look at a survey. We're going to do a survey of rates, not only how much should they be, but what should the structure be? Should there be a rate for people over 65? Should there be a rate for people who are veterans or disability? A lot of communities do it, lifeline rates. Should there be a separate rate for irrigation? should there be, you can't do a volume rate, that's against the law, but these are the kind of things, and how does all that figure into your long-range capital plan? What do you project that to be? I believe the town manager and I have talked briefly about maybe doing a joint survey to put sewer in there as well. So it's important, I think, that you're able to account for that. And I'm not a break-even kind of person. I think we owe it to the ratepayer to do better than that, to give them a little bit of a return and be able to do capital projects like the hydrant. Washing Pond Tank was built with retained earnings. And to do a 3-year hydrant project without having to borrow money. Yep.
I'm a supporter. I'm just curious.
Yeah. It's an ongoing question. It certainly is on how much the rate should be and what should it support. And when do you tweak it?
Sorry, Bob. Another question.
Yep.
My favorite one from last year. So we have account number 52404, which is the repairs and maintenance for buildings. And I know the line item last year was in $88,500. You spent to date, looks like $22,000 of that. You intend to spend the delta, the difference?
On
On
the
that
account
line
this
item?
year?
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Yep.
And then I see what looks to be a major decrease if you compare the 58.5 that you're budgeting against the 88.5, but in actuality, that 88.5 is a kind of an anomaly. So what are we doing for 58.5 in fiscal 18?
The maintenance that in that account for this year is for the residents on 43 Pulpus Road.
Yeah.
Yep, and that includes some windows, that includes painting, carpeting, because I'm going to be moving out.
You must have destroyed the windows.
Windows, painting.
So what is in the 58.5 for next year?
We're also planning on cabinet repair. There's a number of repairs to be done to.
So that was
Pulpus.
that was this year. So what's in the
Yep.
58.5? Sorry.
So next year, as I explained earlier, then that should be under the pumping structures.
All right, because I see money on the pumping equipment, so that building is relevant to structures. Because I also see a line item for pump structures, so you may want to check.
For next year, that's a large jump in the pumping structures, and that is going to be particularly the largest item is going to be the fencing around around the wells, around Washing Pond, around Wyers Valley, well number 12, and the Worth pump station.
Yeah.
The balance of that is carpentry and new roof up at Washing Pond, and then general carpentry at the other pump stations. Rake boards are getting a little rough. They're all 20 years old.
I guess, and I'm coming from when I look at the overall budget, and I look at maybe 4 line items that are on the increase and just isolate on those. There's $500,000 worth of increases in 4 accounts, which represents about 10% of the budget. And I look at retained earnings, and I say if I'm 20% return on my investment that I'm putting to the bottom line, but I also look at some of the expenses we're doing, I wonder when too much retained earnings is too much, and maybe there should be, granted, a freeze on a rate for water is great, but I'll end it with a but. So I look at the unallocated, my last maybe comment, and it could be a question. When you look at unallocated expenses, and you can put them down as $280,000 for next year, and I know it's not a slush fund, and I know it's not a pop-up fund, but to go that magnitude and increase, to me, is planning. So I guess I'd look at that as one of those 4 accounts that represents a pretty good sum of money. So I would think that a person who does a budget, you plan to spend that, and there's some thought. So it's almost unallocated. It's maybe not the right word. I know it's an accounting word.
It is a large number.
Yeah.
And in previous years, it's been a small number. I mean, my basic budgeting philosophy is that I believe in being as realistic as you can with revenues and expenses. And when I prepare the budget, I do one and then the other, and I don't look at anything until I get that number down and I'm confident with it. And the balance, I really believe you need to go in with a balanced budget. You have an obligation to do a balanced budget. And that account is the balancer. And you have a choice to either lower the rate, so you make that up by a lower rate and your revenues go down because the rate's down, or you recognize it for what it is and it goes to retained earnings, and we do have a substantial amount of retained earnings right now, and we are budgeted for a rate and cost of survey study that when that's done, it may have the answer that the rates are too high or they're too low. But we'll know that. We'll benchmark ourselves against national standards and against, I think, what this community and what the commissioners come to expect for our operation.
Thank you.
Yep.
I want to kind of just address a little bit of Joe's comment too about retained earnings. One thing that I think everybody needs to remember is that a significant portion of these retained earnings have been generated by the fact that over the last 2 or 3 years we've done a significant amount of bond refundings, and the water company has been one of the primary beneficiaries of the amount of those refundings that we've been able to do, which is evidenced by the fact that in this year, in 18's budget, they're down about $300,000 in debt service, which is one of the reasons, which is one of the contributors and primary drivers of some of those retained earnings that you were talking about. I just want to make sure everybody understood the fact that that is one of the primary drivers of where these retained earnings have been generated over the last few years.
Quick question: can you update us on the permit? I remember from last year you were talking about this applying for the 21-year permit that you mentioned earlier, and I seem to remember something about volume rates and whether we're going to whether development on the island is going to sort of bump up against limits that the DEP or whoever puts on it.
That's right. Water Comment has a permitted withdrawal limit, and it is 2.2 million gallons a day right now. We're allowed to exceed that for certain times of the year, but we're bumping right up against that limit. So as part of the permit process, they take a look, the Department of Conservation, Recreation, and DEP, look at our population, come up with a number based on what they think our water supply will support. Totally artificial number, and the permit that we were scheduled to go tomorrow, but the weather doesn't look that great. So we're going a week from Friday to discuss this permit because they are creating our new limits and projecting them out based on a 2005 baseline. Totally unrealistic. What they really don't understand is we're unique. They do not understand about our aquifer. They do not understand what restrictions place on your revenue stream. Fortunately, Governor Baker, the report just came out, the decree that if you pass a regulation, DEP, you have to determine the economic impact on the communities that are subject to that regulation. Well, I can tell you right now, just in some quick figuring that Heidi did yesterday, that they want us to limit irrigation to 2 days a week, 4 hours a day. And that's unacceptable to me, to us, to the water. That there's no scientific basis for that. And were you to do that, that would cost us about $157,000 in lost revenue. I think it's a major breakthrough that we're meeting with the water supply people from Boston next week, and we are going to educate them about our aquifer. We have spent in 20 years well over $1 million understanding this aquifer, and no one understands it better than we do. In fact, our hydrogeologist is here now doing more readings from the New Mexico School of Technology, and we're going to convince them that these restrictions are not acceptable, and it'll be a trade-off. We've got to do these the leak survey. We've got to do the water audit, but those are good tools that a good system does anyway. So, but we're going to have a very serious discussion about water withdrawal rates because it's for the next 21 years.
Do you benchmark the water usage against the population numbers?
I'm sorry.
I should say that. Do you benchmark the water usage?
Joanne,
Yes.
would you use the microphone?
Do you benchmark the water usage number against the population number?
We do. Population is a moving target, and finally, the regulators gave up. They just decided that the Cape, the Vineyard, and Nantucket, they just cannot figure out the seasonality factor. But the benchmark in the state is 80 gallons per person per day. The target is 69 gallons per person per day. We're at 110 gallons per person per day. And I'm real comfortable with that. State's not so comfortable, but we're going to be having that discussion. But they've really pretty much taken that part of the permit away. It doesn't apply to Nantucket. Fortunately, we don't have cold water fisheries here. That's a big thing. So that's, and I didn't mean to ramble on, but that's where it's at. Because we have, I'd like to address the capital request. I could.
Yeah, let's just make sure there are no more operating questions.
I just have one more. In terms of, you said, I think, 117 new services this year, new service hookups this year. How does that compare to the last 5 years?
We're projecting we'll be at 117. It was 115 last year, and then like 102 the year before. I'm kind of going from memory, but then it was pretty steady around 72 to 85 right around 2010 or so. So it's really been in the last 2.5, 3 years and looking what's on the books, it doesn't seem to be slowing down.
I have one question. I'd like to circle back around to your salary category. You're projecting 178,000 and change increase, 70,000 of which is for the new position. So leaving about 100,000 of other increases, which is about a 10% salary increase. And I know you said that part of that 170 was also benefits, yet we have line items specifically to address benefits.
Are you looking at, David, the million?
I'm looking at account
871.
51100.
The 1,187.
Well,
Yeah, that's on page 21, David.
pardon me.
Bob's referring to page 21.
My pages aren't numbered that way.
Oh.
Or I don't have them. Oh,
I'm looking at this.
I got it. All right. I'm looking at this.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at this.
Hopefully they all tie together.
Yep.
Thank you for that reassurance. Now, I've got it. All right, so the 187. Bear with me here just a. Okay. All right. Thanks. That's fine.
Actually, the difference is the assistant manager, which is a new position this year, plus the tech, and those two equal the two new employees, and then the difference is the change in the existing employees. I still think that, I mean, I'm looking at line items for 13 people and numbers for 13 people, not 11. So I know it says 13 positions here too, and that's 2 more than last year's 11. So I think the line item's a little fat by at least the $70,000. Just one man's opinion.
We're talking about employees. Isn't it safe to say in the last at least 5 or 6 years since I've been here, we've eliminated people's jobs completely at the water company due to technology. So we're probably running lean compared to what we would have had to have if we didn't have this advanced technology like Sconset. We got rid of, guy retired, we didn't replace him. Isn't that true?
That's right. Right now, the number of people that show up for work every day are the same number of people that were here 20 years ago. The same number. So we've recognized that we needed to add more administrative help, and we did that by taking the money that was allocated for the Kurt Glidden's utility man position and putting it there. Now we still have an unfunded or budgeted position of utility man, Kurt, if you will, plus the meter technician.
So I was just trying to make the point that through
we-
technology we've
right.
probably lowered our payroll as what it would have to be if we didn't
And
have
that's right. It's a shift towards customer service, servicing the customers versus, pick and shovel.
I guess I'm coming around to where Peter is. I think you've got 13 people in your budget. You've got a vacancy and you want to add somebody. Why not use the vacancy that's there to add for your technician and drop your cost by $70,000 or whatever the number is, plus benefits?
Well, the total numbers don't add up either on the
No,
personnel sheet.
We have
I mean,
13
it's
positions.
higher there, and we have the unfunded position
Yeah,
on the personnel sheet. So it looks like we're budgeting for 14, and then we have 13, and we're saying 12.
We have 13 positions funded. Right, 13 positions are funded.
Right.
Okay, but your personnel spreadsheet has 13 with a total salary of $1,187,000, and then when you go back to the other sheet, we have
Correct.
$1,251,000.
Right, but you have to remember the $1,087,000 actually includes the longevity calculation. So I think if you take out the the 1,187,300 minus 33,400, you are added to it. I think. Gotta look. Yeah, hold on. I can get.
In addition to the salaries funded for 13 people, we include a merit number of which is $20,000. We have on-call pay, $25,000. We have a little bit of money, $2,500 for temporary overtime. We have the longevity, and that's all built into the bottom line, including all the salary expenses, $1,871,920 funding for 13 positions.
And I guess what we're saying is you've got a vacant position and you're requesting another position.
We have one right now on our
Yeah,
main-
you've got a vacant position.
Yep. And we're asking
For yet another position.
position and retain that vacancy.
And why not fill that position?
Why not fill the position that's there?
That's vacant today and not request another person?
If we classify this person as a meter technician and don't fill the union position, which is utility person, then we have our meter technician who's not a union person.
Okay, I buy that as a strategy, so let's get rid of the utility man union position off of your budget and reduce
Fine.
it by $70,000.
That's fine.
Correct.
It's going to fall to retained earnings.
Yep, that's fine. We can do that.
Heidi, are you good all the way around? I know the board can't make a decision, but because you're not in session, but
We have a meeting scheduled for next Thursday to deal with whatever happens here today. So the commission I certainly would recommend to them that we don't want to fund that for one more year, but I would put the caveat, don't be surprised if in the next fiscal year that we decide after we get done with all our studies and leak surveys and the maintenance plan that we come back and we want to fill that position. But for fiscal year 18,
I think that's fine. I mean, if you have a justification for a position and you can make the case to your commission and whoever else you have the discussions with that you need to fill a position in the following fiscal year, then then that's acceptable. I think
sure.
we've been working hard with town administration to, if we have unfunded positions, not to keep adding to them. So if you need somebody, either fund it with an existing unfunded position,
Sure.
or in this case, eliminate the unfunded.
We'll make
position
that
expense.
recommendation. That doesn't affect us for 58, for 18, no?
Committee, are you comfortable that with that as a recommendation to the Water Commission?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've heard what we're asking you to do? Okay, great. On to, let's talk about the building, and I don't want to shortchange Tom and his team, but so let's jump into that discussion.
Thank you for considering it. We have been working hard since May. Originally, a couple of years ago, we had funding approved for a new administration building of $3.5 million. We started looking at, in a real quick, rehab. Cost estimates we're getting, the cost of operating out of temporary facility, the potential lapse in security of the customer database with the IT stuff. So, and builders telling us, you can build new rather than rehab better. So we started looking at that. The hospital came along, and we kind of took it a little track for a bit and came back on track and decided that we, after talking with the IT people, looking at the property that we had, looking at our existing building, the decision was made to construct a new building on the site, which would allow us to also increase the safety factor, would allow better access and egress out of the property. So in May, we started that process. We started the design process, and culminating in a building that was approved by the HDC. We went through the whole construction estimate process with a construction estimating firm using the Nantucket 40% factor, and it came up with a spread, if you will, between $4.7 and $5.2 million. So we decided to take a look at modular panelized construction. We'd had experience with that. The residence is a modular home. The new shop, or not so new anymore, was panelized. It was a kit. And so we had some experience. So we went to and we wanted to get numbers. We felt we need to explore all those possibilities. So we put out an RFP. We got 2 proposals, and we have and then we evaluated them, selected Delbrook Scanlon, opened the price proposal. Even with that price proposal, we were still $1.5 million short. One of the things that kind of stuck out was the hazardous materials in our building. The cost to remediate those is $178,000, the estimate by a hazardous material engineering firm. So we we took a look at all of that. We called in Delbrook Scanlon. We not negotiated, but we reviewed their price proposal, make sure we understood everything. And by the time we added all the site work, the hardscaping, the furnishings, soup to nuts, they're looking at a need for $1.5 million in funding. And I appreciate your even considering this, because all this happened after our hearing with the Capital Committee, and I have provided the Capital Committee Chairman, Christy Kickham, with a copy of the memo that you had. I didn't want him to think we're trying to do an end run around him, but I feel that we have done our due diligence, more than due diligence. Our team has been working every week, a meeting on this building, trying to get the cost down. We have worked with the IT department. We've got fiber optic there. We've worked with Lawrence Sinatra at the Energy Office to look at low wattage electrical systems that can be more efficient. And we feel we have a building that's even with a partial, we eliminated the full basement, went to partial basement. So even with that, with a 5,100 square foot building that we think will serve the ratepayer and the staff at Wannacomet for another 25 or 30 years. And so we're suggesting, and our recommendation is, and we went to the commission, we laid all these out for them, and we have the money in retained earnings, $2.6 million certified. We take that, we still leave us with $1.5 million rather than go back to town meeting and ask to borrow more money. We feel that this is a proper use of retained earnings, and we feel real good about where we're at with the numbers. It's the climate on Nantucket is a public building, and we've explored about every option available. So that's our request, Mr. Chairman.
Questions from committee members?
I know that you've been, that the Wannacomet's been asking for appropriations planning for this building for a long time. How has the program for the building changed since you began looking at it 5-6 years ago?
That's probably what we spent the most time on, Steve. Even when we were looking at rehab, was the program. It's got to work for the program, and there were the expectations of customers are higher. We have more customers coming in daily. The security factor is a concern with the building. The energy efficiency, it's 2 zones, but there is no place in that office where if you come in, and I'll tell you, we have a number of customers that we need to talk to in a private setting. There just isn't there. It's you walk through the door and you're right in somebody's at somebody's desk. So people and the way that we deal with customers has changed significantly. We need, we don't. That building originally had the meter shop and the trucks in there, and that's gone away. We need have an efficient electrical system, heating system, the expectations, I say, of customers. That's key to us. We're there to serve the ratepayer, and we're doing more. We're being asked to do more by the regulators. We're being asked to provide more information to the customer, and that building just doesn't do it. We're not asking. Our new building's not much bigger, but it's a heck of a lot more efficient.
How does the requirement to provide more information to the public necessitate a building with a price tag anything approaching this?
Yeah. Right now, if you come in and you want to speak to someone about your bill, then you're going to do it at their desk or go out or maybe in the hallway or go back to the kitchen. There is not a private area unless you ask someone to leave their office. And the way our meter systems are now, and we're providing more information to the customer, it's just the request for information about their account, the security. The building doesn't work for that. It does not work for that. It does not allow a customer to come in, sit down, review their account in a private setting, nor does it provide security for the employee. So
Security in terms of the public coming in and is a threat to the people who work there?
There have been incidents over the years where one of us will go out of our office into the front where someone is a little agitated. And you've been in our office. You just walk in.
Sure, and get great customer service. And
Yeah, we have some people don't at times think our customer service a little lacking, and so what our security measure is. It's like you're at the Dreamland. It's a velvet rope. That's our security measure. But there's
on a per square foot basis, the Dreamland did a pretty good job. If we're
Pardon me?
comparing it to this building.
I'm sorry?
I said on a per square foot basis, the Dreamland did a better job than this building is proposed to be.
Yeah, private. But I agree. The cost it floors us.
I mean, it's a shocking sticker price.
Yep.
And maybe this process started before I was a member of this committee. I don't think that so correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that this building went through the same rigorous process that we put the fire station work group through. Value engineering that building, getting costs as low, cutting out all the fat from the program. I'm hearing that we need a place to have confidential meetings between your staff and members of the public. This is a very high price tag for that.
Let me address that, because I do disagree with you. But this building has, whether it hasn't got the same in the Inky every week scrutiny, but believe me, we have worked with our own team, with the architect, with the town's OPM, to get these costs down as low as we can get them down, and still provide a facility not for today, tomorrow, but for 20 years down the road. This building is about as energy inefficient as you're going to get. It does have 2 zones of heating. It is built in 1973. It is not insulated well. The wiring is marginal. We've had to upgrade the service once. It does not meet the function for a water company that can deal with the operational engineering side and all the permitting, water quality, and the customer service side. Provide security, provide an efficient workplace for the employees. It doesn't do that.
We also don't have a mechanical room right now for all of our servers. So years ago, we didn't have the need for the amount of servers we have right now. We have 3 servers on site, and they're in an employee's office. So there's just
We're talking about physical computer servers?
Yes.
The size of a desktop tower?
No.
No, we have big racks, big giant racks.
Okay. So back to the question about the program. When you guys saw that the price came in 40-some-odd% higher than you had estimated, did we cut anything from the program, or we said this is the minimum viable product, this is absolutely what we need?
We spent a lot of time on program.
So that's the question. Over the years, what has changed from the dream building to what we have before us?
Dream building to the base building. We had a dream building, and now we're at our
Oh yeah, absolutely. We started with this process a number of years ago, Steve, and we had a dream building. Everyone was going to have a real nice office, and we were going to have a full basement, and we were going to have record storage. We were going to have a little elevator, so we didn't have to carry boxes up and down stairs. That all went away. We decided we needed a building that allows us to work efficiently, to be a utility efficient building, not a green building, but be efficient. And we've cut out the square footage down to what it is right now, to our present square footage. So I think we've done a real good job of looking at our program, what people do day to day, what they need to do their job, and look at the infrastructure in a building needed to support that. And we have pared it down to what we believe is a workable, sustainable building for the water company.
Thank you.
Have you looked at rehabbing the existing building?
Pardon me?
Have you looked at rehabbing the existing building?
We initially started out rehabbing the existing building, and that at that time versus stick built, our advice from local builders and from our architect was you can do better if you stick built. So we moved away from the rehab aspect. The base, has no basement under it now, and there's an elevation grade there that's a little bit of a tricky, but you could rehab the building if we had to, but then we looked at what it would take to stay in operation with the computers. We had IT come and look at that, what it would take to move those servers, to where would we operate out of a trailer. So is it off the table? Not entirely, but it's way in the back of the closet.
Bob, I'm not sure if this is a question for you and the commission and Libby, or maybe all three. With your pending retirement, and I'm kind of echoing some of Stephen's questions, I sit here and think about a physical structure that's gone up, from the 4.7 to, call it 5 and change, and ask myself, I hear you say you're getting away from utility men and you're getting more to desk type jobs with obviously IT experience and needs for IT storage. Couldn't we put this on hold until we have a new change in the department head and maybe some new thought, not saying your thought is not new, but some new thought go into it where this can be contained in a potential new building, whether it be on 2 fairgrounds or in the Plus building or the potential of building there. If we're getting away from the majority of one, I'll call it the work rooms, and more into the IT, more into customer service, more in people skills, it just seems like an awful lot of money to spend. And I understand retained earnings, it's appropriate. But is it appropriate to use that much? You deplete all your retained earnings. So I look at all those things together and just ask a general question. Maybe just think about, should we relook at it?
I'm not going to speak for the commission, and I'm not going to try to second guess what my successor is going to do. But I would address the 2 fairgrounds issue here. A number of months ago, when the town was developing plans for 2 fairgrounds, we were asked to come look at those plans. Was there a way that perhaps Wanacoma could fit into those plans? And we did. We met with the people. We gave them our program that we used to develop the square footage.
Yeah.
And but we also told them that the interaction between the customer service people, if you will, and the guys, the meter tech, it's like this every day. Every day. Someone's on the phone, the work order, someone has a problem, it's back and forth all day long. And the plan that was developed for 2 fairgrounds was only the administration people. So here's your operations staff over at Milestone Road, and here is your administration at 2 fairgrounds. Now, it is not uncommon, and it happens every day. Someone will come in, pay the bill, and say, "Is Chris here, or is Bob here? I got a funny noise. My water smells funny.
So
one-
why can't we
yeah.
ask for more space? It seems
Yeah.
like a simple
So
request.
the floor space that is in this new building is our consolidated operation. It would certainly, if you divided that operation administration, say, okay, administration's going to 2 fairgrounds, when? That would be my question, when? I think we've seen, when? And it would be a very inefficient operation, I think, and the customer and the ratepayer would suffer from that. So if you want to move everything to 2 fairgrounds,
Why not?
I would be my problem with that is that Wires Valley, that's where that's the nerve center for all the pumping, all the SCADA comes into that. There's an alarm, bam, we're there. I'm over at 2 fairgrounds, we get an alarm, it's in August. How long is it going to take me to get from there to Wires Valley? I just think that the operations, the pumping, the whole operation of the water company needs to be in the same place. That's my, based on my experience in this business and with Wanacommet, that's my opinion.
But we do have wells and wellheads and pumps in multiple areas, correct?
But everything comes.
Understood, but
Everything comes to Wires Valley in the office or my house. Yep.
okay. It was just, and I only make the request as
and we felt that it was important enough to look at that, out of respect to the town manager and her planning. And I understand that there are some folks who think that's the way it should happen, but I disagree. I don't think the ratepayer would suffer, and I think that given the economic climate that we're in right now, I mean, you saw I don't know if you saw, but our second quarter report, we're looking at, another good surplus for this fiscal year, an increase in retained earnings. Interest rates are starting to climb up. Now, there's no guarantees that this building and next year, the year after, we have hard numbers. I think that's the other difference between us and the fire station. We have a number.
Well, your overage is just about what theirs was, but on a much smaller project, so. Right.
So, I mean, we went through the RFP process, we got quotes, and we got a number. We signed a contract with them today. If we had the funding, we know what that number would be.
Okay. A few months back, when the Cottage Hospital was looking at your site, Nantucket Cottage Hospital was looking at your site, and they offered to build you a building. It was going to be on this site, or it was going to be somewhere else?
With the hospital?
Yeah.
Well, if the hospital had built at Wires Valley, the new office building, what we've designed, as well as the maintenance shop, would have been moved, as well as all of the controls and all the alarms would have been moved to Pulpus Road. So we'd still have, would we have immediate access to Wires Valley, but we would have moved all of those SCADA servers and alarm systems and reporting systems from there to the secure room at North Pasture. So we still would have been right there.
Thanks.
Unfortunately, that didn't come through. So that's our,
Great.
Yep.
Thanks, Bob.
we ask for your consideration. Okay.
Brian, quick calculation off the top of your head, heading for the water main replacements, debt service, principal and interest amortized
Oh,
per
I
year.
I will say that the water main project that's starting February 6th on Prospect Street, you might want to, if you need to go to the dump, you might not want to go on Prospect, that side of town. But we had allocated $1.5 million, and it came in at a little over $1 million was the bid. It's really funny that the pipe projects are coming in lower than anticipated cost, but building is coming in at significantly higher. But
Probably about 110, depending on if I take it all 30 years or not. As we start looking at all this debt, I mean, some of it's going to change in terms of what is budgeted annually because we have the debt service policy, which does require between 50 and 65% of all debt amortizing within 10 years. So it's going to require some review and restructuring as we move forward on how we're looking at these. 30 years would be the maximum that we would take out this for. So. But I suspect it's going to be somewhere between 20 and 30, depending on when you overlay it with what's coming off to make sure we stay within the guidelines of the debt policy.
So with an anticipated borrowing for the water main programs,
Yep.
You're suggesting 100 plus in additional principal and interest.
It's about 80 if you take it for all 30 years on the 2.4 plus whatever the interest works out to be. Typically, it's where given the uncertainty, you're probably going to go a little bit higher on the calculations for the rates just because we don't know what's going to happen with them as we move forward. Because that particular project wouldn't be, it would be, we would use bond anticipation notes probably in the short term and probably wouldn't borrow that for at least a year from now. At least.
And do you have an opinion about the level of debt that the water companies currently carry?
I think there's really not a lot of option when we have to make these large-scale repairs other than financing it through debt to get it done in a timely manner. So, I mean, I think that they certainly have proven that they can generate the revenues to cover the expenses, and they haven't had a rate increase for a few years, and they've still managed to service the level of debt they've had. So I am comfortable at this point, given what they're trying to accomplish.
And you've done a 10-year capital plan, did the capital committee see that capital plan? And do you recall, or
yes,
maybe you can address?
We have a 10-year capital plan out to 2026, David. The total is, I believe, right off the top of my $15.4 million with water main replacement for the next 6 years, which also will include the replacement of all existing lead services. It's only because of our water quality now that we're not mandated to do that, but at the end of 2023 there won't be any left. And then that's a major issue of capital. The next big issue would be in 2026, and that's the washing pond standpipe. A decision is going to have to be made whether to rehab it or replace it.
And that's 50% of your anticipated capital spend, 75%?
Yeah. So
what?
Right, of the $15 million, about $8 million of that is for water mains. The rest is washing pond.
Okay. Anyway, thank you. What's the pleasure of the committee? I think they're looking. I believe you're looking for us to provide you with some guidance one way or the other on whether we support the request.
That's correct. We are asking for your support to approve this addition to the capital that we've asked for.
1.5, right? Just for the numbers, am I missing something? 2.6 and 1.5 is 4.1 versus 4.7. Are we missing some money?
No, 4.7 is the bid they have for the modular or panelized building.
Okay.
So I guess they want to add in some more contingency. They want to have $5 million so they can cover whatever else might come up.
Oh, I just thought the retained earnings were only 2.6, and we
They've previously been allocated $3.5 million.
Oh, okay. I missed that part, I guess.
The original appropriation was 3.5 million.
All right.
I'm just going through this the first time.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no.
at the time of the original appropriation, what would have been the sort of depth of understanding of this board of how much time would you have spent going through? I mean, would you have looked at plans? What level of detail would you have gone into to make the original appropriation, if anyone recalls?
I don't recall we spent a huge amount of time, but
I don't recall seeing floor plans or elevations or comparing it to the building they have now or hearing what the needs were for the various things they wanted to add.
Mr. Chairman, the original appropriation was 3.5 million. I believe there's 3.1.
How much detail did they need? How much did they review?
Oh, you reviewed that appropriation. That appropriation went through the capital program committee.
right, no, understand. Chris was just asking how much detail, did we review it? And it had gone through the capital committee, so.
Yeah.
I'm the new guy, so I was just looking for some of the history.
If I'm back at that time, the capital program committee actually came to the building and did a walkthrough, looked at the plans we had, and then made a positive recommendation to the FinCom, which approved that. For 3.5, the money was borrowed, and we're using that for design services right now.
So is this appropriate for me to ask you guys for your?
Go for it.
Typically, then that capital committee would be the one rolling up their sleeves and digging into this in more detail. But the way the timing's worked out, they haven't been on the loop on this additional ask. Is that?
They were not involved in the additional ask.
So.
But I presume it has been reviewed and approved by the water commissions.
The water commission
Mr.
did.
Chairman, I just want to, excuse me, if I make the point that we reached out to the chairman of the capital planning committee to meet with him before this meeting, and it just, for whatever reason, didn't work out. He wasn't able to make it, so we provided him with the background in the memo that I sent to you in your packet. So,
Is it appropriate for us to ask them to spend some time on it and roll up their sleeves a little bit and come back and?
Yeah,
Tell us
maybe
what they think.
maybe we need to find out what is the deadline for action on the bid that they have.
so when we went to the original capital committee was back in October with our capital plan for water mains, Chris, and it just, we didn't have these solid numbers at that time.
No,
So
I
when did you
understand.
receive the bid, and what's the deadline for action? When do you have to accept the bid if you're going to do that?
We will hold that. That is being held until the funding, at least till town meeting, is resolved. That number is solid till then.
I wasn't aware that's how bids went for
Well,
public
it may
building
be on a
projects.
it's a panelized building, and I think they have different.
Yeah. That's when we reviewed the price proposal after we rated.
I think it's fantastic if we have time to review it. Having spent some time with the fire station work group, I thought there was a much shorter window within which you had to act.
No. The
Okay.
contractor has agreed to hold his price. So.
Okay. If we have time, I think I would like to hear from Christie and from the capital program committee about what they saw the need was.
No sense?
I wasn't at that meeting, so I can't give you any input, sorry.
Well, I don't think the first meeting back a few years ago you weren't on,
Nor was I at that, correct.
and it didn't come up this year. And I think what you're asking is that
Yeah, just
the capital committee meet
Yeah,
between now and the end of February,
right.
come back, report back to us. Is that a sense of?
I guess. I mean, I find myself wondering whether we're really going to get that much additional information. I mean, I feel like we're kind of in the same corner. I mean, I don't doubt that a lot of people have done a lot of work. That Bob's, you designed this building, and yet we're faced with a bid for a 5,000 square foot building at $1,000 a square foot. I mean, you kind of takes your breath away.
If I may say,
Could you please come up and address?
That price does take your breath away. But in 3 months, it's not going to be any lower. We all know that. And all this back and forth about our retained earnings, it has been the philosophy since I have been on the board that we have a healthy retained earnings because we need it. The first water tower was put up with that kind of money. We have everything in place. We have the contract, and this money is sitting there, and you said you'd like to see it lower. I would like to see us spend it and put it back up there for when we do need it. That way we're not chasing the ratepayer for more money all the time. And we are cautious enough to save every year some money for future use. Does that make sense, Stephen?
It does make sense. I don't think that we would all agree that we know for certain that construction costs will be higher in 3 months than they are today, nor would I say that they will certainly be more, that it'll be more costly to build this 2 years from now. And I haven't heard, maybe the capital program has, but I haven't heard that this building is needed to be replaced right away. I mean, I've heard that it's nice to have a meeting area for confidential meetings, and that's great. This is a very high price tag for that.
But, Stephen, it's not just that. The building is 37 years old.
Right. It's not as old as our town building on Broad Street. It's not as old as a lot of facilities that the town has and operates.
No, but the power we need in it is not there.
If the decision is made for the capital committee to take a look at this and make a recommendation, I would ask that that meeting be held at Wanacoma. I would like to show the committee that building. They looked at it once, they walked through. I would love to show you that building.
I'll go with you to see the building outside of that. I don't know that we have the authority to tell the capital program committee where to
But
meet.
I guess that's not, but if you decide that capital needs to look at it again, then
Great.
but we would.
Okay, we need to come to some resolution. So, what's the pleasure of the committee?
I mean, if we want to have Christie, or at least address us, or somebody from the capital program committee, and get an opinion, just to be responsible. Obviously, it's a lot of money. Not to say, Joe's made the point. A lot of people have done a lot of work, and we know this project was, underway. We approved $3.5 million, and we seem to keep having this problem over and over again with the increase in construction, no matter what we build. So, I guess some additional effort by the capital program committee, and then we can make a decision.
I mean, I'll make a motion. I presume we have to make a motion to, we want to make a motion on the regular budgets as well as the additional
Well-
million and a half? Is that where we're at?
Yeah, I
Or
think that we'll
postpone
take.
discussion
We're
of one
going
and
to.
a half?
Yeah, I think we need to wait till after our public hearing on their budgets, because technically we can't make motions until the public hearing has taken place. But I think we, in the form of a request of the capital committee, we certainly could do that, and I would like that to be in the sense of the board.
As opposed to what Bob and the Water Commission would like us to simply give our
Correct.
kind of
Our endorsement.
our endorsement today.
Correct. And I guess, if I were spending my own personal money on this, I'd probably be looking at a renovation. And, what seems to be we have $3.5 million, which for $1,000 a foot on renovation, you probably can do a fair amount of good. So, I mean, that to me would be a question back to the capital committee, is why, in today's environment, I think if the building were falling down and we had a public safety issue or whatever, I mean, it just seems to me that,
I mean, I'm sort of horrified too. At the same time, we went through this on the fire station. You know, we had a great discussion, and we ended up, you know, basically forcing them to go back to the drawing board. And Stephen probably knows the numbers better than I do, but my sense is, you know, the savings that we'd hoped to force or create turned out not to happen.
well, as an investment professional, you will appreciate we're buying at the top of the market in every one of these decisions we make. And this is not going to continue forever.
Plus,
I mean,
there's
I can't say it's going to be over in a year or 2 years. None of us can. But this is not a, you know, the stock isn't growing to the sky.
All right, so do we want to?
So anyway, go ahead.
Well, I
I'm
was
sorry.
just going to say, plus there's a $2 million spread on the money that was already allocated and, you know, what the new building would cost. And just because I'm new, would the capital committee have given like a little report that said new construction versus rehab?
I have no idea what they, you know, what they went through.
Like just like
in
a
their
little
process.
analysis that
Well,
said,
it
you
would have
know,
been, I think every year what we get from the capital committee is better, but we had something back a few weeks ago, and that was probably more than we might have had.
Okay.
All right, so our options are either to endorse the additional million and a half today, or ask Christie and the capital program committee to take a relook at it and come back with a recommendation.
Correct.
Is that kind of where we are?
Somebody want to make a motion, one of those two items?
I'll make a motion for capital program committee to take a look at it first and report back to us if they could.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So what we will do, I will make a formal request to Christie to convene the capital committee, of which Peter is our member, and if you want to do a site visit to Wanna-Comet, please arrange it directly with Christie. And
I was just going to offer,
I'm sorry?
do you want me to reach out to Chrissy, or are you going to?
You can reach out to him. I will make a formal request to him just
Okay.
for
Then,
protocol.
Mr. Chairman, isn't the February 6th the day of the public hearing?
Yep.
So you would like his recommendation by then?
No, we
Okay.
just need to have it before like the first week in March, because we have to finish up with all of our motions by then. So we have plenty of meetings in February.
Okay, then we'll
Take care
reach
of it.
out to him and,
Yeah, I mean,
invite him.
we'd like
Well,
you to do a thorough job. So
Yeah.
let's not rush it.
well,
We got
that's
the time.
that's kind of what we felt we've been doing with this whole project. So we will, we'll reach out to the Capital Improvement Committee and ask them to do a site visit.
Great.
Thank you for the discussion. Thank you for your consideration.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Appreciate it, Bob.
Thank you.
Heidi.
Thanks, Bob.
Commissioners. I'm sorry to have you all sit here for such a long time. Please come up. To the committee, I think we're going to end up running over 6 o'clock. I apologize ahead of time, but it is what it is.
Thank you. I'm not sure what approach you want to take here, but I can give you a high level, get into our exceptions, and then talk about the specifics as you prefer.
Yeah, I think that, why don't you just start in like that, Tom, and one thing, we do have new members, so.
Well, I want to start off with a little bit of the history here. For those of you who are not aware, we have been building a budget. It's a work in progress. We don't have a lot of history, if you will. Just a couple of years ago, the budget consisted of a handful of line items, and money was taken as needed out of wherever. I mean, I would look at one line item that was for, let's say, uniforms, and I'd say, how come you spent $80,000? Well, they bought 2 buses out of that. So we've been working very diligently, and Jamie's done a tremendous job of categorizing them and organizing them and maintaining some financial discipline. So it's very difficult, though, because we don't have that history, and that's where you'll see some of the fluctuations. In general, though,
what we had in the past, and David, I believe you had commented a couple of years ago, we relied very heavily on our retained earnings to offset the operating budget. We're making a significant effort to reduce that. It's down to about $200,000. Ultimately, we want to get away from using retained earnings to balance the budget, but what we will be doing is using another fund, our fuel revolving fund. We won't be by any means depleting that. There's a significant amount of dollars in it right now. It's about $1.7 million in it. So we're working towards that goal. In addition, we have something that is kind of like a retained earnings, and it's called a passenger facility charge. It's within our operating budget, but it's reserved, and there's currently about $1.1 million in that, and that is approved by the FAA for capital projects. So between the retained earnings, the PFC, our goal is to use those for ongoing capital and reducing our debt service. And that was another big goal that we have, is reducing the debt service. We are leveraged pretty far out there, primarily because of the terminal, but we're starting to chip away at some of the smaller items and taking off what we can. So they're our main financial goals. I can go over the exceptions if you'd like.
Just come back on the passenger facility charge. So it's you can't use it for operating expense.
It's a very.
Does everybody know what the passenger facility charge is?
Mm-hmm.
It's $4.50 is what it's capped at today by the federal government. We had to put in an application to the FAA with identifying specific projects that had to meet their eligibility requirements, and then for every in-plane passenger, which is a passenger that gets on board a flight and leaves Nantucket, we get $4.50 minus 11 cents. The airline collects 11 cents for the collection. However, to your question, David, we are reimbursing ourselves because the airport has already put out a lot of money for the debt service for the terminal, and that's the big project that we had approved. We're reimbursing ourselves. So once we reimburse ourselves, yes, it can go in kind of to operating, but we're internally focusing that towards capital and debt service.
All right.
So with regard to the exceptions, and I don't know if you want to go over the revenue exceptions or just the expense, but
well, let's start on the expense. So you got a position.
We have one position, and that's to meet what's coming down the road as a regulatory requirement. Airports are going to be required to have a safety management system, and we could either contract that out or we're looking to do it in-house. It will not be 100% of the individual's duties. It will be about 60 to 65% of their duties, and then the additional duties will be some administrative. So it's a non-union position reporting directly to the airport manager. So that's the primary driver for the increase in the salaries.
And it will be a non-union position?
Yes.
Is there any question about whether is that up in the air, or is that?
No, I think it needs to be, it has to be as defined by what the requirements are. It has to be reporting directly to the airport manager because, again, it touches every aspect of our work. So.
Okay.
The next exception is the equipment rental and fuel truck rental. That was under budgeted in the prior year, and due to some of the cost changes and things, it had to go up slightly by about $13,000. The third exception is a triennial drill and the special events. This happens triennial, every 3 years. We're required by FAA to do a full-scale exercise, so we fund that accordingly because we have a lot of things that are associated with it. Then we have our miscellaneous purchase and operations, significant jump there. Again, the budget, last year's budget was significantly under budgeted. It was a new account in 15, so again, this is one of those primary examples of we didn't have a lot of history, but we are basing a lot of the new numbers on the actuals that we do have and the history that we do have. There's in that account we have hazardous material waste expenses of about $12,000. Our foam for our fire trucks is about $7,000 is purchased from there. We have to calibrate all of our fuel trucks and farm. That's about $5,000. We have a few $1,000s extra in there because we're purchasing new AEDs, defibrillators for the building. We only had about 2 or 3 on the entire airport, and I didn't think that was sufficient, so we're adding those. Firefighter suits at $5,000. Previously, that was covered by a state grant. The state has lost a lot of funding, so we now have to pick up some of that, and you're going to see a significant increase in some of the maintenance items because of painting. They used to come in and paint either a runway or a taxiway. They'd alternate the years. Again, they lost the funding. We now have to paint it, and it's a very pricey item. The repair and maintenance buildings, we have 3 not-to-exceed contracts for our primarily HVAC and infrastructure, and we have to budget the full amount, although, again, our objective, they come to about $120,000. Our goal is to manage them at the $80,000 range. But because it's a not-to-exceed, we have to encumber or account for the entire amount. The same is true with the next one on the repairs and maintenance of the airfield. We have some not-to-exceed accounts for airfield lighting, which is about total of $65,000. We have an electrical one for our electrical vault is about another $25,000. And again, these are ones that are, if you may recall, we had a significant event where a pipe burst and shut down a lot of our regulators. We needed the money, and we then went and signed a contract with an electrical firm so that they could come in and do emergency repairs in the future if we need to. We're hoping that's not going to be the case because we're building a brand new vault, but again, we have to have the cushion because we need those for emergencies. The let's see here. The next one, I believe, is a fuel storage facility. We currently have a contract for $46,500 for the annual fuel farm tank inspections, and it's again just maintaining, cleaning, and upgrading, and based on historical data on the fuel farm. The next one is repair and maintenance, the Thompson House. The Thompson House is the house that we use for housing seasonal employees. It is, I don't want to use the term rundown. It needs a lot of tender loving care, so we're putting aside a few dollars there, about $11,000. The travel and transportation, that went up by about $5,600, and that is actually, we just got some news today, it's subject to change again. Again, we need to put this in the budget because we're looking into the H-2B visa program, and we would be required to pay for the transportation of those individuals to and from their home countries. And then the last is the insurance premium on the auto and liability, and this is based on information that we had received that that's what the estimated increase would be from the town.
Any questions for Tom about on the expense side, Peter?
Actually, Tom, I want to congratulate you and your entire team for putting together a phenomenal budget package. And Brian, the software is just incredible. But it's the numbers that you put down and work with that are spot on. It's a joy. Thank you. Actually, a question. Why don't you have an unallocated expense line item?
And I believe it.
Sorry,
one of the things that we are going to be, we have a warrant article that we're going to be looking for, which I think may fit in a similar type category, and that is a stabilization fund.
Good. It was a bit sarcastic. I'm sorry.
I think he wasn't asking you to do that.
Well, so what
It's getting late. A little levity.
What we've faced in the past is we have folks retire, and because of their union agreement or whatever other things, it's not budgeted to pay them their sick time, vacation time, whatever they've accrued. When I first got here, there were 2 folks that left, and I want to say it was a few $100,000 that had to be paid out and was not in the budget. So to insulate us from some of that, we've worked with Brian and the attorneys, and Jamie's done a great job again.
Phenomenal.
We're looking to form a stabilization fund for that specific purpose and fund it with $200,000 out of our fuel revolver this year, or for FY18.
Thank you.
Tom, can you just talk generally about sort of business trends? And before you answer that part, am I incorrect? My perception of looking at your financials are that the airport, sort of on an operating basis, is budgeted to lose around $1.5 million a year, and you hope that either retained earnings, which you've got about $1.6 million of, or the fuel revolver, which has been a very successful generator of surplus for you, fills in the deficit. Is that an oversimplification? Or?
It is one way of looking at it. I'd rather state it as the fuel is another line of business for us. So if we look at our entire business,
it's a
one
revenue
offsets
line
the
as
other.
opposed to
And the way I try to explain to folks is that our corporate GA side of the house brings in about 60+% or more of the revenue, whereas the commercial side is 60+ of expense. So we're funding the terminal basically with the fuel profits is one way to look at it. So, but you're right, and again, we want to get out of that business of using a retained for the operating. We want to use a retained for the capital.
So given that sort of as a backdrop, kind of what are, passenger trends, how you doing about getting another airline in here to replace Island Air?
Okay, and let me first say, I'll talk to those in 1 second, but understanding that fuel's the big driver, that's the trend that we're always maintaining and paying a lot of attention to. We have actually established a very scientific approach to our pricing of the fuel that other airports are looking at very closely, and although we benchmark them, they kind of look at us and say, hey, what are they doing? Because there's a lot of science behind when we change our rates and how and why to maintain our margins plus some. Into the commercial side of the activity, ironically, our passenger traffic, well, knowingly, I guess, our passenger traffic has been decreasing significantly, primarily when Island Air went out of business. Our operations have just started to turn around and come back up, and we believe some of that is the Retrix operation. We haven't received enough information because they've only started in like mid-December or so, so we don't have enough data to determine what the financial impacts of the new service will be. We are waiting for another airline, and I've made calls to both Senator's office, the Congressman's office, to the FAA head, to you name it, all the way down to the FAA inspector. This other airline has been trying to get a certificate for over a year now, Island Shuttle. They will be replacing more along the lines of what Island Air was doing. They're leasing 2 of the same airplanes, that type of thing. We keep hearing, it's coming, it's coming, it's getting closer, we're getting closer. I'm just waiting for that day. So in that regard, the commercial service it's improving slightly. The seasonal carriers, what we're receiving just recently from the schedules is it's indicating that there's a big bulk up happening in July and August. They're really adding some stuff there, and it's going to get very crowded on weekends. And they're shortening the shoulder in the spring and kind of keeping the fall shoulder strong. So net for commercial service, we'd probably be up slightly on the seasonal, and we have the additional Retrix and waiting for the other airline. So operations again going up, and you were asking questions earlier about benchmarks and things. There are standard benchmarks that are done, revenue per in-plane passenger, that type of thing, cost per in-plane passenger. We are just getting to the point where we've organized things now where we can actually say, we can start applying some of those metrics. We couldn't do it before because we're mixing fuel in, we're mixing FBO stuff in there before, and you have to develop your cost center, so we're working on that.
I was going through the other budget, that I guess I call it Libby's budget, for the general fund, and it talks about from 2012 to 2015, the airport was subsidized $4.6 million. Basically, this is the line, the repayment general fund?
Yes.
Line back, okay. So is the total still at around
4 million, something, yes.
Okay.
And it's in the budget. We set it aside for last year, this year. We're still awaiting final approval from FAA, but we're basically, the money's being set aside for it. So.
They won't allow you to pay it back, you mean?
We have to have their approval, them and the state. And they came back and asked some questions. We submitted the details that they requested. So,
okay. So we can it's a one-way street. When we loan money, they won't let us pay it back?
Well, when they give you a lot of money, they have a lot of say in what you do.
All right.
Any other questions? All right, so I would be remiss in not asking if the commission has entered into a discussion, formally or informally, about selling the airport to Massport.
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't heard anything about that.
Okay.
A couple of bridges.
Something I should know.
No. It's something that I personally have been thinking about for a while, about whether, and this, you guys have done a terrific job. So this, what I'm about to say, has nothing whatsoever to do operationally with what you guys have done. It's really more a question of, we're in a couple of businesses that most towns aren't in. We have increasing complexity in our town government, and one just wonders, the airport's in good shape. This is absolutely the best time to be having that discussion, not when you're flat on your back, and whether, much like I know Worcester has done this, and there may be some other Massport may have been involved in some other airports, whether it's not perhaps appropriate to have a discussion to see whether there would be advantages to Nantucket to get out of the business, not sell the property or any of that.
Yeah, I would. It's a very good idea, and I just recently been thinking, trying to take their temperature as to what their thoughts are on the Worcester Bedford that they have now. I know another airport system that's fairly large that doesn't necessarily care for having those smaller ones. They see that as something that they don't want to do, but they've been forced politically to do or whatever. So there's different alternatives in operating. I think I mentioned before, too, one of the things that we've done is we've formed a coalition with Hyannis, the Vineyard, and now Bedford and Provincetown. New Bedford and Provincetown are getting involved with us, and we're working on collaboration for air service development and a number of other issues, too. So it's a good idea, I think, to test the waters and find out what their temperature is and maybe look at, what are bigger picture alternatives. I will mention that to our
Take
chairman.
that to your commission.
Yep.
Might prove to be an interesting dialogue to start.
Sure.
See where it goes. Thank you. Any other questions?
Mine's a little bit off topic. Is there anything that the airport commission or the town can do to encourage JetBlue or some of the larger carriers to extend their services to places like New York and Washington?
If only it
year-round
was
or
that
longer?
easy. No.
No.
We do have an
some kind of like punitive
we have an
landing
incentive
rates
program
in season or something.
No, well, we can't.
No.
As much as I'd like to, we are
sets
seriously looking into seasonal pricing, both for commercial and GA. We asked the compliance officer from FAA, and he instructed me to go back and check with our industry leaders, and I did. I spoke to a fellow who was at Aspen, who is now at another heavy resort airport, and I said, have you heard anybody that has done this? And he said, no, but it's an interesting idea. Yeah. It's kind of contrary to what they call peak hour pricing. So we're exploring those alternatives. What you need to do with an airline is actually give them a very good, strong, solid business case. And the airlines have more data on us than we do on them right now for the seasonal. One of the objectives of this coalition is to gather data from the air service development consulting firms to determine what is the best business case argument. For example, in the winter off-season, it may be that a carrier out of Hyannis flies to one of their hubs, and ourselves, the Vineyard, Provincetown, New Bedford feeds Hyannis. And that way we're not all having to head further north to go south at a very high price. So they're the types of things we're looking into, but it's very difficult. They wag the dog, unfortunately.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions? Tom,
Thank
Jamie, thank you very much. Sorry to make you sit here for as long as you did.
Whatever you need,
I thought it was
let us know.
be faster with the water company, but I should learn after all these years. So
All right.
anyway, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
We don't have any more official business. I don't think anybody wants to talk about town meeting articles, citizens articles.
No, I just I haven't seen it on a recent agenda, so I want to make sure that we don't completely miss talking about ratifying that letter that you had drafted to send to the Board of Selectmen.
It's already been sent.
It's already been sent. Okay, good.
When you get asked to respond by a certain date.
Ratified.
It's been ratified.
And I appreciate all of those that did respond. But no, I actually earlier this week dropped it off at the Selectman's office.
Great, thanks.
So, and thank you for the people that did.
Did we get a copy after
I-
post?
I have not copied anybody, but I will send
Okay.
a copy out. I have it on my computer. It's pretty close. You had made some suggestions. I incorporated everybody's suggestions that it made. And it's, I don't know if you've seen it, but I'm pretty sure that it's probably gone to your chairman. So, anyway.
Good.
So, done. So Saturday is our show. Appreciate it if everybody is here and ready to go at 8:30.
You bringing jelly donuts?
I asked for protein. He said he's not. A couple meetings ago. Protein keeps you alert. Come on.
Is Joey Donuts protein?
I'm not sure about that. I'll put you to
I've been
sleep.
sort of looking around. I could get arrested for doing this, so you guys can hear no evil. But we'll see what we can do to keep people awake.
Yeah, there's like a little snack area in the back.
Okay.
Is there?
Yeah, there is a kitchen actually.
Civic
this is
League
the
has
room
used
we're
it
in.
before, so.
All right. I'm taking responsibility for that, so we'll make sure.
You need help, David.
I do need help?
Now, if you need help,
Oh, all right. Do you want to get the jelly
I'm
donuts?
not getting jelly donuts.
What protein do you want, Peter?
I'd rather have a bacon sandwich than a jelly donut.
So we're going to start at
Thank you, Terry.
8:30, and if you all have time to reach out to your partners, that would be good, just so that we are reasonably coordinated. And Brian and Julia, thank you very much. I know you put a lot of
Incredible.
work into this, and I personally really appreciate your effort.
But it formulates a lot of questions.
So anyway, thank you very much. So can I get a
So moved.
motion to adjourn? Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you Saturday.